The senator from New York.
I just want to respond to my colleagues and chairman and ranking member. While I am extremely grateful for their leadership and their willingness to review and take on the IRC recommendations, the IRC recommendations are limited. It was only a 60-day review of the issue of sexual assault and sexual harassment only. It did not look at the military justice system overall and did not have the benefit of 8 years of review, study, and passing related amendments and changes. Our committee has passed over 200 or nearly 250 different resolutions and changes to how the military deals with sexual harassment and sexual assault to no effect. This deferring only to the IRC, which is an unelected panel that's only looked at this issue for 60 days, is not sufficient. Not only do we have senators on the Armed Services Committee that have been studying this issue for 8 years, making recommendation and passing laws on this topic for 8 years, it would seem to defer to a panel that's only looked at this issue for 60 days to one issue seems irresponsible. Second, I do not believe that issues of this weight and of this significance should be dealt with the committee only. The Armed Services Committee has been working on this issue for 10 years, and we've seen no improvement on the number of sexual assaults in the military and on the rate of prosecution and the rate of conviction. That's highly problematic. Also, when asked for a vote on this measure over the last several years, I have been denied a vote on this measure on the floor by the chairman and the ranking member. So they have been unable or unwilling to allow me to have a vote given all the bipartisan support we've had from the beginning. This bill has been bipartisan from day one. Senator Grassley has been on this bill from day one, as have several other Republicans. Today, we now have 63 co-sponsors to this legislation, widely bipartisan, and more than half of the Armed Services Committee. We have established that the weight of this Senate, in a filibuster-proof majority, wants a floor vote on this and does not want to leave it up to the committee. They have lost, the Armed Services Committee has lost their opportunity to claim sole jurisdiction over this issue by failing to improve the situation over the last 10 years. In fact, the 250 measures that we passed were all approved by various panels that took 60 days or 90 days or a year to review this issue. And we willingly took those recommendations and turned them into law. I, too, will willingly take the recommendations of the IRC board and turn them into law because they are good and thoughtful recommendations, but they are limited. By design, they were only allowed to look at 2 crimes, sexual assault and sexual harassment. And by not looking at all serious crimes, you are not looking at the weight of the problem. We now have evidence that's been developed since 2017 about racial disparities in how the criminal justice system in the military works. Protect Our Defenders issued a significant report that I would like to enter into the record with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
That report will show that Black service members were at least 1.29 times and as much as 2.61 times more likely to have disciplinary action taken against them in an average year across all branches from 2006 to 2015. These disparities largely did not improve and in some cases worsened in the most recent years covered. So we have other challenges within the military justice system, and now we have 2 areas where we have data that the military itself has collected. On sexual assault, we have 10 years of data, and now on racial disparities and racism within the military, we have data over the last 3 years. And that has to be considered as well. And so the way to fix both of these problems is really simple. Professionalize the military justice system. Allow serious crimes to be taken out of the chain of command and given to trained military prosecutors who do not have bias and have highly specialized training. If we professionalize the military justice system, we will see justice done because there will be less bias in the system and there will be more professionalism. And the combination of those 2 things, we believe, based on what military members have told us, will result in more cases going forward and more prosecutions. Second, we have the support of military justice experts. We have a letter from the National Institute of Military Justice where they say, the National Institute of Military Justice recommends transferring prosecutorial discretion not only for all sex offenses, but also for all serious offenses, those for which the authorized maximum punishment exceeds 1 year's confinement. The defining line is a familiar feature in the American criminal justice system. These changes will strengthen the fairness of military justice and bolster public confidence in the administration. Similarly, we have a piece published in the Marine Corps Gazette by Captain Lambert Jackson, who has prosecuted these cases. He served as trial counsel for the 2nd Marine Division and as a complex trial counsel. He fundamentally understands the nature of these cases. He was an operational law attorney in the 1st Marine Division. He says that felony prosecution determinations must be vested with trained military attorneys rather than commanders. Disentangling commanders from the often ugly legal determinations for which they are ill-trained will allow commanders to more effectively focus their attention on preparing their units for conflict. So while I appreciate the willingness to take the recommendations of the panel that General Austin has impaneled to look at just 2 crimes, and while I agree that we should accept those recommendations and I intend to push them into the mark through our personnel subcommittee, we also should look at the reforms that 63 senators want done. We should also look at the reforms that are supported by more than half of the Armed Services Committee members. We deserve a floor vote, and we deserve a process that cannot be undermined by the committee. I have served on this committee for 10 years, and the chairman well understands that in conference, bills that have passed both sides have been taken out. And you do not have to look farther than what happened to the Safe to Report language. It was passed in the House, passed in the Senate, and Safe to Report, by the way, was offered in the Senate by Senator Ernst and I on the Armed Services Committee because it would deal with retaliation. And that bill was passed in the Senate, passed in the House, and taken out in conference. That's a problem. So I do not want to expose this massive reform that is a generational reform to the whims of those who decide what gets taken out in conference. It's not acceptable to me to be watered down or reduced or minimized by those in conference. And that is the risk you run by not allowing this to have a floor vote, which it deserves.